Hi there. This is my review for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Episode 2, titled Hard Salt Beef. Well, to start with, I'm sorry this review got delayed. What happened was, the week it came out, the eastern United States got buried in snow, and that shot all of my free time I would have devoted to audio recording. I caught up on other things like episode notes, and I did a lot of wiki writing, but just audio recording time was shot. And in turn, it had a knock-on effect that there were various family events that were postponed from that week into the next week, and this affected my other reviews. Sorry about that. Good news is I'm up to speed on all of my notes and researching behind-the-scenes videos and all that. It's just making my own reviews. It's due to snow. But as I explained in the first video, I'm not stressing about that too much because I realized this is sort of a slow burn show. That they could have done it as a movie, but they really should have done a binge drop for this because it's a short novella. It's not like chapters with clear endings. By episode 3, people were locked in, but I was really worried about the first two didn't feel like event television. But as time progresses, March onwards, any review channels that are doing live reactions or whatever, they can just do a binge watch. And it'll be a lot easier for them to get hooked. So more so than House of the Dragon, I really foresee that the popularity of this will steadily increase through the rest of the year as more people discover it. So I wasn't trying to rush out a review that I hadn't scripted just for the sake of having one by Monday. No, I want to make a quality review that we know objectively, this isn't just wishful thinking, more people are going to be catching up on this. I am trying to get back in pace with the show by the end of the season, of course. But that's why I wasn't stressing out about that too much. I knew people would be catching up on the reviews. So here we are. As I said in the first one, the way I structure my reviews is by focusing on a checklist of the top 7 most notable points about an episode, because 7 is a good number. And these 7 notable things can be good or bad, or just interesting lore things I want to point out. And sometimes I'll go through it quickly and go, I'll mention this here, but I'm splitting it off into a lore video there for things that deserve it. That introduction out of the way, let's dive in. Point 1 out of 7. I loved the running theme throughout the episode, focusing on Dunk's relationship with his mentor, Ser Arlan. A lot of it told through flashback. And it's really a core theme of this story, this specific show, fathers and sons, legacy, and the values we pass on. And I love it both for what they showed and also how they showed it, but let's start with what they showed. That I really like the balance they had, that Arlan wasn't some clean and wise Obi-Wan Kenobi type, nor is it this subversion that he's just this mean guy who was slapping him in the flashbacks we saw in the first episode, that he's this grizzled, slovenly hedge knight who spent most of his life living on muddy back roads. He's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's just some average slob, but he also lived decently and honorably within his capacity. That this is a big part of Martin's writing for Westeros in general, and they nailed it. That he's, a three-dimensional flawed person, generally trying to be good. That he's gruff, but here you see him singing a traveling song with Dunk, or just sharing a laugh about being soaked in the rain, and it was, heartrending that you could tell he was dying. And you also do see that, in the first episode it might have seemed, rose-tinted glasses that, oh no, he trained me and stuff. You do see Arlan patiently putting in time training Dunk and not yelling at him or anything. That I like the sports analogy a lot of people use with this, including the showrunner, that Dunk is sort of like the kid whose dad trained him with a punching bag in the garage. It's not that he has no training. He had home training. He knows a decent amount. But then he shows up at the stadium for the LA Lakers basketball team or something, realizes, I am totally out of my depth in this. That it's not like a comedy where, like, I don't even know where the pointy end of the sword goes. He's had some training. But he's up against rich kids who were trained by Olympic athletes because their parents could afford them. But like that they show that Arlan is training him. He is actually helping him, and he repeats, I was an orphan before I met him. He saved me. So this was great that they showed him as a balanced human being throughout the episode, and looking at live reactors unfamiliar with the source, I mean, they got it too. That, yeah, there's the gag stuff at the beginning, but then you just see a quiet moment with them, and then he's sad that he's dead. That was great, the balance they showed with that. Well, that's what they showed, but what impressed me even more was how they showed it. That they didn't do it with lengthy dialogue scenes, nor did they do what Benioff and Weiss would have done, with bizarrely long, tight close-ups on the actors' silent faces. And go, no, they can convey a relationship by just emoting really hard at the camera. No. That even though Arlan has no substantial dialogue in these flashbacks, he says, hey, Dunk, come here, or something where he's singing, but he's not exchanging dialogue with Dunk. That he isn't really giving words that way. It still is not a case of telling the story with the faces. These performances, these faces, that's the mantra they kept using in the Game of Thrones commentaries, that, well, if you look at it, Arlan isn't even facing the camera in many of these shots. That they're not playing off tight close-ups. What it is doing is using the montage effect, which is really one of the specific qualities of cinema as a distinct format from text or still images. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock talked about this in various interviews. He said that editing together different shots in sequence and making a montage of them is one of the central tools of this art known as cinema. Because when you make a montage like this one, sometimes you can have a contrast montage. This is a time montage. That it conveys the passage of time, and more than that, it conveys that these glimpses we're seeing are part of a larger story, as if we're thumbing through a book and seeing a few pages at a time, because your mind is subconsciously filling in the gaps. What matters more than the glimpses we're seeing, it implies this was what his life was like all the time. That they're just riding along, smiling, having a song or something, eating hard salt beef. It conveys the impression to you that these are examples of their overall relationship. And it does this more than any one scene of dialogue ever could, no matter how well written. That the use of montage effect, and I don't think enough reviewers are paying attention to this, and really weren't when Game of Thrones was on, that we were praising it, that Benioff and Weiss are actually terrible at adapting page to screen. That there is an objective checklist of cinematic techniques and storytelling devices, which in most cases they avoided because they were bad at them. That we have quotes of them saying these things, things such as flashbacks or montage effect. That Benioff actually complained, it's hard and confusing for me to signal when a scene is a flashback. Therefore, I don't do them. Or he flashbacks are lazy. He's avoiding them because he doesn't know how to do them well. That this isn't complicated, he was simply bad at it. And notice that House of the Dragon made better use of montage relative to Game of Thrones. Not in an intrusive way, but if you look at, oh yeah, that was told in montage, or the montage of Queen Emma dying and the tournament, various things like that Game of Thrones rarely did. This show uses montages even more, and on top of that, it actually uses flashbacks. I made a whole separate video about that House of the Dragon doesn't really use flashbacks because its whole thing is flash forwards and time skips. Structurally, you wouldn't. This show has a lot of flashbacks, little ones. And in this specific episode, not only is it really doing a good job of telling his relationship with his mentor, Ser Arlan, as a three-dimensional regular human, they told it using both of these storytelling devices combined both of these cinematic techniques. Guys, we got a montage sequence within a flashback. Think about that. The Game of Thrones never did that. To convey a relationship with people. And yeah, you can point like, oh, there's that one time they were forced to do a flashback in the season 5 premiere and they hated it. Or they said, oh no, the Bran visions technically aren't flashbacks. Rarely they'd use montage to show passage of time, but to really build a relationship like this is a great use of the storytelling tools of cinema, in a way Game of Thrones never did. And look at how many people went from laughing at Arlan to almost crying that he died by the end in a lot of reaction videos. How impactful this was, they managed to do that. Because this is what, real page-to-screen storytelling is. Point 2 of 7. Organic world building and exposition. I love how they were introducing things by name-dropping them gradually, instead of big forced info dumps. No, this was natural, that Dunk mentions Arlan fought at the Red Grass Field and his nephew died in the battle, without fully explaining what that is yet. Or in the final scene where Egg was play fighting and casually mentions, "Do you yield, Blackfire bastards?" I think every book reader had a grin at that, because it was the first time that the Blackfires have ever been mentioned by name in live action. Game of Thrones never mentioned them whatsoever. That the live action episodes, that I know the animated motion comics covered that and they're great, but those are written by other people. Those are written by their assistants. That the actual live action episodes never once mentioned the name Blackfire. They just weren't concerned with the backstory like that. And a reality is that a large portion of the audience going into this show have never even heard the name Blackfire before. So they're going to have to introduce it. And complicating matters for the TV writers on this, the Blackfires weren't mentioned in the first novella. That it's the second novella that really devotes a lot of time to setting up what happened and their backstory, and that these are the main ongoing antagonists in the background. Martin hadn't even developed most of their story by the time the first novella was written. He wrote that between the first and second main novels. And it's only in the second main novel that they really start talking about the Blackfires, what happened with that, and Bloodraven, and Maester Aemon, and all this other backstory. So by the second novel, and then the second Dunk and Egg novella, that's when they got all this development. So we knew going in, I'm not blaming the TV writers on this, that for Ira Parker's group, that any time they mention the Blackfires in season 1, it's a retcon originating from Martin himself, that it makes sense to start seeding them. Seeding mentions of the Blackfires, because these are people who lived through the war. But it has to be invented scenes, and you don't want it to be this big artificial info dump. I felt they struck a very nice balance with this, that this is the right way to do it. That don't have him do what TV Tropes calls this the as you know trope. That it's when it's clumsy exposition, it's like someone going, in our world, as you know, the United States and its allies fought Germany in World War II. It's, who talks like that? People don't do that. That Dunk is talking about, oh, he fought side by side with your father at the Red Grass Field. It's a really famous battle. They know what it is. So they'll refer to it by name without giving its full backstory, and then you peel back the layers and add more as the show progresses. They did this the right way. We've been discussing this in all of our prep videos for over a year now. Will they even mention the Blackfire Rebellion in season 1 if it wasn't in the first novella? And if they do, will it be a clumsy info dump, or they're going to handle it? This was perfect. This is the right way to do it. I commend them for it. Point 3, Targaryens. We have this big procession, and point 3 is Baelor and Maekar. That we also get bits of Baelor's son Valar, and Aerion does have his introduction here with Dunk, but it's the same scene as was in the trailers. So I'm going to cover Aerion next episode. This is focused on Baelor and Maekar right now. His scenes with them. They're actually a slight change from the novella, because he just came back to see the games master plumber at the assigned time they agreed upon to tell him, well, actually, I'm empty-handed, none of the lords would tell me anything, and he just happened to stumble into Baelor and Maekar by blind luck. And then went, I remember Arlan jousted with you like 6 years ago, maybe you can vouch for me. This is a slight change, I'm totally fine with it. Makes more sense of, Baelor, I recognize him because he was there. I'll sneak in, follow a servant woman, then just awkwardly plead with them. And it happened to work out because Baelor's a nice guy. So they shifted that a little. It's fine, it feels more natural this way. I actually think this is better. What's really interesting are the performances. That the performances of both these actors are outstanding. That Baelor really is the soul of chivalry. And you see he's refined, he's polite, he's well-spoken, he's a royal who actually behaves dignified and polite, and you just feel he's what a king should be. The dignity, his fairness, that he's kind to other people. I can't say this is exactly the vision in my head of the character, because he's clean-shaven in the book. I don't know why they gave him a beard in this, but while it's not 100% my visual image of it, just in terms of his actions and performance, if not visually, yeah, this is Baelor. He's really giving a great performance here. Memorable. This is a man who will be the wise king for everyone. Maekar is slightly different in tone, but not enough that I'm really complaining. You get the feel of that he's the younger brother who everyone overlooks, even though he is a war hero. He's from the Hammer and the Anvil. He's the Anvil. I still think it's fitting that he's blunt, but he's not needlessly cruel. That he's the one who's not as courteous, who's cursing and like, I said F me, not F him. I'm not cursing at him, I'm cursing myself. What of it? That he's a little gruffer and a soldier, but he's not needlessly malicious. He goes, get the hell out of here. Now, fine, okay, you can compete, fine, now get out of here. Things like that. He's a well-rounded person like that. But I really like how they played with the theme of classism in this, just because that shift in focus, that up to this point, we've been really used to seeing aristocrats talking to other aristocrats. And then in the first episode, it's mostly Dunk talking to other commoners, or even to Plumber the Games Master. He's not a lord. This is what talking to great lords and royals feels like. We got a bit of that with Baratheon last episode. Now this is the crown prince who is also hand of the king. This is the second most powerful man in the entire realm. And just how scared out of his mind he is talking to them. So this is a great performance by Claffey, really selling that if you were to walk in to the prime minister or something, just, whoa, you're this really important celebrity guy or a really powerful man. Claffey is practically shaking in this. So in his physicality, his line delivery, that all of this really sells that from the perspective of one of the commoners, what it's like to meet one of the royal family, and unexpectedly like that. 0.4 out of 7. I'm going to split this off into its own video, that we got to see the Kingsguard with book-accurate all-white armor. They were gold in Game of Thrones with white cloaks, and House of the Dragon tried to strike a balance by making them a bit closer to the novels by having, instead of gold, it is silver with white highlights, and at the time we were praising this is closer to the way the book did it. But I ended up writing like a full page of notes on my thoughts on that, in the nature of adaptation, and do you make compromises or not. It is nice to see the all-white armor from the books in at least one show. So I enjoyed it, but I'm going to talk about that more in another video. I'm going to split off. 0.5 of 7. The Legend of Jonquil and Florian the Fool. I already said I'm going to split off a standalone video about the Dornish puppet show in general, as an art form, but this is specifically on the story that they happen to be telling in this episode. The story of Jonquil and Florian the Fool is a very popular romance in Westeros. It's mentioned a lot more in the books. It's popular with nobles and commoners alike. It is Sansa's favorite romance, so her chapters refer to it a lot. Though it actually was mentioned in the Game of Thrones TV series. I don't think anyone remembers this, but way back in Season 2, when Tywin had scenes with Arya, There's a point where he says, most girls are interested in romances like John Keel and not political history. So that was in the TV show already, and it's that important, but as for here, we never actually heard the full story, even in, The World of Ice and Fire. We don't know what the whole legend is, we just know it's famous. And the most we ever heard about it is this part of the novella. And the TV show copies the dialogue verbatim. That this is John Keel meeting Florian for the first time, and you're a knight and a fool. Pretty much all we know about it. One other thing, though, there's a later point where Jaime mentions that Maidenpool, which is a major port town in the Riverlands, he says, well, it's called Maidenpool because, according to the legend, that's where Florian first stumbled on John Keel while she was bathing in a pond. Which really sounds like the Greek myth of Artemis and Actaeon, really. So you get the impression that it's this whole epic legend without Martin ever having to actually write it. So he's cheating there a bit, but it's a lot more common in the books than it's ever been mentioned in the TV show. And I'll talk more about the style they did with the puppet show later, but just in terms of what is their popular culture like, what are their myths and legends about, John Keel and Florian the Fool is a really big one. I'd say Romeo and Juliet, but they die in the end. But on that level of everyone knows it, Prince Charming and Snow White, everyone knows it. 0.6 out of 7. Sourleaf and Aurochs. I like the little world-building Easter eggs from the books that Ira Parker has been putting into this, that these were not in the text in the novella as such, that little references to local history, plants or animals that are different in their world, that this is actually the first time that Sourleaf or Aurochs have ever been mentioned in a TV episode, even though they were both present since the first A Song of Ice and Fire novel. That Gren is nicknamed Aurochs in the books. They cut that out, because then we'd have to explain what an Aurochs is. Well, then you'd have to explain what a direwolf is, or what a dragon is, And then there's Sourleaf, which is basically their version of chewing tobacco. But I'm going to split off a separate video about this. I liked it as, Ira Parker didn't need to do this. They're nice lore Easter eggs he's putting in there. 0.7 of 7. The night jousting scene, which was very well done. That real-life jousts actually did usually have multiple pairs facing off at the same time like this. And they do in the books as well, that there's 5 different lanes, 5 pairs. And notice that filming at night does not automatically equate to pitch darkness like Season 8. You just have to think of light sources. The House of the Dragon Season 1 did that too, where when they go out into the city, they said we had to come up with, there's a street festival with a lot of bonfires, to come up with, well, where's the light coming from? As opposed to straw man argumenting as if, oh yeah, where is the light coming from? Why didn't you have fires to backlight everything is weird. The other things like that. But here it's Lord Ashford wanted to impress everyone with a night joust, so he set up a lot of braziers on those pillars like that to light everything with bonfires. That works, that's fine, that's a light source. This isn't rocket science. That's just common sense. But no, my real focus on this point, 0.7 is officially stunt safety with the horses, which they really emphasize in the behind-the-scenes video. And I guess it kind of worked out that my review was late, because they didn't put out the behind-the-scenes thing for this one until after episode 3. Because it's a shorter show with fewer locations, fewer things in it. First episode, they put one out. It's called Making a Night, the big behind-the-scenes featurette. And these are free on YouTube. I will link it below. Please watch it, is my whole point. Because I can't use clips of it for copyright reasons. But they're putting these out for the rest of the season in pairs. There's one combined one for episodes 2 and 3. So, because I was late, I got to actually see the behind-the-scenes stuff and how they filmed episode 2. They spend a lot of it emphasizing all the steps they took for stunt horse safety. And obviously this is a video they made, so if they did something wrong, they would admit to it, but still, the videos we actually get to see in it, they show, look how the horse is doing a stunt fall, And when it's going through the railings, those are made of foam. I wish I could show footage of this, can't for copyright, but the impact of actually seeing this, that they're showing the behind-the-scenes video of the horse slowly doing a controlled kneel into a fence, then someone yells cut and it immediately stands up again. That the horse is fine, that it just kneeled, got right up. And then with editing and they speed the footage up, it looks more violent than it actually is. That this is what horse stunt falls are meant to look like. And it covers it for the stuff in episode 3 as well. I'll get to that. We didn't really stab a horse through the neck, but otherwise that was a real horse, that it's doing a stunt fall. And they did it all very carefully. In contrast, we were horrified on Game of Thrones when we found out just how little Benioff and Weiss, well, not just how little they knew about stunt safety, but how little they cared. How little they wanted to learn. That if you directly told them it takes 6 weeks to train a horse to do a stunt fall, they just flippantly go, well, do it in 2 weeks. Like, do you understand how working with live animals works, that we can't make this happen faster? Or that they'd, write their initial draft scripts actually had horses running into each other, and the director, Sapochnik, turned to them and went, did you think out whether a real stunt horse would be doing these things, or if we'd need CGI? It's that thing where it's not that I didn't like their answer, I don't think they understood the question, that they just write the script with no thought to, do you think a stunt horse will actually have to do this? And then when the director and the horse trainer is trying to explain to them, horses can't do this, or this would require this type of thing with a horse, they were just, will find a way. That they really were so unwilling to listen to experts on lighting or horse stunt safety of these are the things that you are limited to doing with a stunt horse. So just, I can't use the video clips. Please go to the link below. I'll give instructions on the specific timestamps on how they're showing this is how to have a horse doing a stunt fall the right way. Well, that's my 7 points. I'm sorry for the delay. Overall, I would rate this episode a 10 out of 10. Just like the first one. I mean, the measure I use is, would I insist on changing anything? Well, no. Nothing so critical that I'd insist it should have been changed, or something omitted from the source material needed to be added back. Nothing worth changing. That when I first saw it, yeah, the episode lacked the wow factor of, last week, my god, this really is dunk and egg in live action. From meeting the main characters for the first time. But in retrospect, this one had more dramatic depth. So overall, I even felt it was a stronger episode. So a little less wow factor, little more thematic resonance. So they're good in different ways that I would put both of these side by side as a 10 out of 10. Truly 10 out of 10. The things like Dunk's relationship with Arlan and just the legacy of your parent figure like that. This is great quality level. I agree with people going, wow, it feels like Game of Thrones did in its first half when it was actually doing the books. Yeah, because this is adapting finished prose text from Martin again. And I made a whole video about how you shouldn't really knock on House of the Dragon for not having Martin-level dialogue when he gave them an outline. It was physically impossible. Even House of the Dragon Season 1 didn't feel this good, because they didn't have Martin's prose text. And I get that, so that it doesn't mean I'm going to hate on them for it. But just in terms of the wowness of this, and after the first 3 seasons of this show, we're never going to have that again unless Martin knocks off more novellas. But for now, I'm just enjoying it. That this feels like Game of Thrones seasons 1 to 4, one of the episodes Martin himself wrote. That we are back. This still, like the first episode, is like watching the story of the novella walking off the page.